Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. I'm Rathnakumar, I'm a blogger, tech entrepreneur, product data guy. I hope everybody liked the first video where I was talking about the whole product management. I gave as much understanding I could give about product management altogether. And in this video, we're going to look at product development. But before we jump on to product development, I think it would be nice to start understanding product lifecycle. So I'll give probably just about what product lifecycle is, and then in this series we will see what the overall product development is. Let's go on. Hi everyone. As a first video into the series, we will see what product lifecycle is. Before we jump on to product development, because I thought understanding a little bit about product lifecycle would be more helpful. So I thought I'll start with that. When it comes to product lifecycle, it is majorly differentiated into 4 phases, regardless of whichever type of product that you work on. The first one is introduction. The second one is growth. The third one is maturity. The fourth one is decline. And when I say the 4 phases, it is possibly based on the sort of revenue curve across the product. That is exactly how we divide the 4 phases. And when it comes to introduction, we are talking about product getting into the market, more around not around the beta, but at least the early market one, the MVPs and the early market product adoption. The people who use the product over there are also very early adopters of the product. So product is still not matured. Product could be still naive. There could be a few bugs in the product, but people try it out with all those things. So that's also the reason why they are called early adopters. And this, at this part, the revenue curve is really not steep, or the company is not making too much money out of the product. But still, these sort of users actually give you the real-time understanding about the product. They'll give you insights about the product. They'll share valuable feedback on the product. So that is probably the first phase to start with. But where the revenue is not great, but there's a lot of understanding for internal and external users about the product. So that's the first phase, introduction. The second phase is growth. In the growth phase is exactly where the product is actually getting into the market, and you start seeing a lot of top and bottom line numbers working towards and against you. And typically, let's say you're looking at a slightly more innovative product or a very efficient product, the revenue growth phase is really high during this growth phase, where there's a lot more adoption. A lot of your target customers are buying your product, and your top line and bottom line looks really nice to you. So this is the phase a lot of companies sort of enjoy, because there's good adoption within the market, and there's also the numbers also start reflecting on your balance sheet. So that's the second phase, which is around the growth phase. Third phase. Third phase is the matured phase, or is when the product sort of gets matured at a certain phase. It's not going to be always a V curve, or it's going to sort of just slide, parallel at some point, or just get plateaued at a certain point. That's exactly the maturity point where the product has hit the market. There's also other contenders in the market who are competing with you at a certain price point. So you have to compete with the market, work around for market share. Let's say you built an innovative product, and now there are competition in the market who are also trying to give the same sort of product or feature that you're giving. So there is sort of market penetration that you had, or the early mover advantage that you had, is all that you have at this point in time. Now the market has reacted to it, and it could be as simple as people started using the product. Now it doesn't look completely out of the box anymore. People are expecting it to do what it's supposed to do. So that is exactly the place where the product gets mature. At this point in time, still, though the sales curve is good, it is not growing at the same rate where it used to grow. So your annual recurring revenue (ARR) or your monthly recurring revenue (MRR) is going to have sort of conflict, or there's a slight dip in one of the numbers. So these are things, these are the type of things that could happen when the product hits the matured product state. Finally, it's the decline phase. It's interesting when you say it, but But it happens. Even if you build the most successful product, even if the product has all the nuances that a customer is looking for, but there is always scope for another person, other company to be able to replace you at a certain level. It could be at a price point, it could be at a feature point. You cannot be the cheapest guy and the best guy at the same time. It's not going to work. It's the Apple and Android sort of fight. You cannot be pricing it at a premium and be able, if you price it at a premium, then you're losing out people who cannot afford it at a premium. Then your market segmenting, market sort of, gets diluted a little bit. Let's say if you are if you want to give the service at the cheapest price, then you can afford all the sort of high-end infrastructure into the product. It could be a hardware or a software product, but regardless of what product it is, there's always a competitor who's going to beat you hands down, either at the pricing or at the quality, because you cannot match those two dots at the same time, which is completely, it's sort of impossible to do. That's the reason why I said decline is a phase that every company, every product will go through. So when it comes to again the 4 phases of the product, the first one is the introduction, where the product really gets into the market, where we're talking about the beta, we're talking about the early adopters, MVPs, and the second phase is where the growth phase is, where you hit the market really hard and start of acquiring market penetration. And third phase is where the product is matured, the matured phase, where product sort of just fights it out with the other players in the market. There are new interventions in the market who wants to have a market share. And the final phase is the decline phase, where even if you're the best product in the world, there is going to be a decline in terms of in terms of your recurring revenues concerned. That is exactly where a lot of companies follow a lot of strategies in terms of global expansions, in terms of bringing out different price tiering. So people come up with different strategies to overcome this sort of decline phase, but it is what it is. So those are the 4 phases when it comes to a product life cycle is concerned. Let's look into the product development further down the series. Stay tuned. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. I'm Rathnakumar, blogger, tech entrepreneur, product and data guy. I think the first sort of part of the series would have given you a little more understanding into what product management was all about. And this part of the series, I started with what product lifecycle is all about, because I think understanding the lifecycle of the product is very important when we jump onto the product development, because product lifecycle sort of just gives you the macro understanding about the whole level playing field. So you understand when you step onto the different phases what really contributes towards those life cycle. So let's jump on to the product development phases here on. When it comes to product development, there are roughly 7 phases. The phase 1 is conceive, phase 2 is plan, then development, the 4th is iterate, the 5th one is launch, the 6th one is where you study, and the 7th one is where you kill or maintain. So these are like the rough 7 phases. It differs between product managers to product managers, or companies to companies as well. But this is sort of the macro umbrella underneath which all the 7 phases would lie across. Some people, some company or some product managers could just put it across slightly different, where they could have 5 phases, when some could make it even 9 phases. But for a market understanding, I think 7 is probably the easiest way to understand. That's the reason I had taken this sort of a framework. And let's jump on to each of the phase. I'll be able to explain you what each of the phase individually does. So phase 1, conceive. Like the name suggests, the conceive phase is where you actually conceive a product or a feature or or an idea. You conceive the idea and then be able to work around it, saying, okay, how to be able to build a product or feature with this idea. So that is exactly where a lot of talking happens, where a lot of strategic play happens. That's also where where you talk to a lot of customers, internal audience, and external users as well. So a lot of companies adopt different strategies, but roughly there are 2 ways of doing it. They call it inside out or outside in. So inside out is where you sort of ideate an idea internally within the company and then be able to launch it outside. And outside in is where you get inputs outside the company, where it could be customers or potential users, and then be able to implement it as a product or a feature within the firm. So those are 2 ways of doing it. But like I said, any way you do it, you start with this, where you conceive the idea. That is the phase 1. Now let's jump on to the phase 2. Plan. Planning is where people like me get into get into really work a lot, where we have to use our elbow creases a lot, because planning is where you are looking at strategic thinking, you're looking at the pricing strategies, you're looking at the competitor analysis, the competitive landscape, the prioritization of features, when and being able to time on when the product has to be launched, what are the features to be built, what are the features to be dropped, who is my ideal audience. So there's a lot of things that gets into play in terms of planning is concerned, and end of the planning is where you will be able to build a roadmap, sort of. Just, I think that's a good understanding to have. By the end of this phase, the end of the planning phase, your goal is to be able to attain a roadmap that the product will be following for the next 5 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever, based on the type and size of the product. But the end goal is to be able to come up with a roadmap. Now let's move on to the phase 3. When you jump onto the phase 3, you're talking about development. I think that's where everybody's hands gets dirty. Leave me, but but the developers, the analyst, the data scientist, anybody for that matter, that is exactly where we got to be able to really jump onto the paddle, get your hands dirty and start developing the whole product altogether. Every company, different companies looks at development different ways. There's agile methodologies, there's a lean methodology, there's waterfall. We can jump onto them some of the time in one of the video series, and be able to explain on how these strategies work. But regardless of which strategy you work on, development is the phase 3, where you start with conceiving the idea, and then you go towards building out the plan and roadmap, and then the third phase is to be able to develop. The fourth phase is called the iteration phase. Iteration phase is as critical as any other phase that you have, because iteration is where you're not happy about something, or you want to be able to add or remove something, and you go back to the development stage. It's a vicious circle. Between the development and the iteration phase, it's such a vicious circle. It goes around and around, because I had personally never seen a product where you didn't have an iteration phase at all, where you conceive, you plan, you develop, and you move on to a launch. That never happens. This iteration phase is where you open up to a close group audience, where you can pick a few sort of audience who is going to use the product, give it out as test case, and be able to test out the product, saying, okay, if all the features are working or not, if all the UI UX are pretty good or not, are you able to consume or conceive the idea, or am I able to communicate what I wanted to communicate through the product? Is the product achieving its KPI or not? So those are the things that you test during an iteration phase and see if it's happening or not. If it's not happening, then you move on to the development phase again. So like I said, this could be a vicious circle. So if you haven't conceived and planned your idea right, then the development and iteration is going to really you're going to see a lot of backfiring that could happen, to the extent that the iteration, when you get to the iteration phase, you not only jump to the development phase, but even at times you could be jumping on to the planning or even the conceiving phase. Those are the crazy things that could happen. But being being so as good as what we are, we make sure the conceiving phase and the planning phase are really good, that we don't have to jump from iteration to the planning or conceive phase, but it goes to the development phase for sure. So like I said, these are the 4 phases that's like the topmost priority to start with. So you conceive the idea, you plan out the idea, you develop the idea, and then you iterate the idea. Once you finish all these 4 phases, then you move on to the 5th one. Well, what is the 5th one? The launch phase. It's an exciting phase, because the first time it sort of just goes out to the market. It's like that's when you can flaunt saying, "Oh, I developed a certain product." There's a lot of ownership element to it. There's a lot of pride attached to it. So during the launch phase is where you start speaking with the sales team, the marketing team, the customer success, the go-to-market, content team, anybody and everybody. You're speaking about the product to all of these people, and these launch phases are also sort of planned out during the planning phase, right after conceiving phase. You plan for the launch right during the planning phase, so when exactly you have to start the launching prep work. It's not like you have to wait till the development and the iteration phase to be completed for you to move on to the launch phase. most often than not, the prep work of launch phase happens parallel to the development phase. So when the product gets developed, or in the iteration gets completed, it is easier to just go on and launch it straight away, rather than waiting for the prep work to happen after that. So the fourth phase, like the fifth phase, like I said, is one of the most exciting phase, because we tend to sort of work with different set of audience in terms of getting the product out in the market. Then the sixth phase. The sixth phase is where you study the product, or the study the product. You can put it either ways. You can either study the product or study the product. Once you get into the market, then it's an utter chaos, because different type of audience are using the product. Different sort of user feedbacks is going to flow in. Then you're going to start working with the customer success or the sales or the marketing team to understand how the market penetration has been for the specific product, and how people feel about the product. Because till this point in time, the product has been only felt by the team which is internal to it, so we always have a biased opinion towards the product. Why, once you go past the launch phase and you're at the steady phase or the study phase, whichever you want to call it as, during the study and steady is where you actually understand how the market perceive the product. It is not about what you think about the product anymore, it is about what market thinks about the product as well. So this phase is extremely critical, because this is when you will understand how the market really reacts to the product. So this is the sixth phase. And finally, the seventh phase, the maintain or kill. So I sound like a Hollywood villain, but that's a very interesting way to put it. This is exactly the phase right after you studied the product, you got inputs from the market, then you understand, are we going to maintain the product, or are we going to kill the product? Where you could have built the most brilliant product, but when market is not reacting or responding right to it, then there's no other go. You got to kill it. But there's a very subtle way of putting it called sunsetting the product. I think maybe you would have heard, we all would have got those emails from a certain products that we were using some time ago, where they would send out an email saying, oh, we're going to sunset a certain product. If you have any data that is attached to that specific product or service, please save it, or please be able to download the documents that you want to download from that specific service. So that is exactly what it is. When they say sunsetting a specific product, is where they just kill it altogether. But that's probably the seventh phase. But and to be on the other side, most often than not, there's a good amount of maintenance that happens rather than sunsetting, because there's a lot of work that has gone into play across the six phases before they get into the maintenance and sunset. But maintenance is where you have sort of plateaued at a certain place, like I was talking in the product life cycle before. That's the reason I started with that, where the revenue sort of you're in the introduction phase and the growth phase, and then the matured phase, and then the decline phase. So you got to go through all these things. Once you get in between the launch, the steady and study, and then the maintain and kill, you go through that sort of life cycle towards this phase. That's the reason I started with the life cycle first. So like I said, it's a very interesting phase, and that is exactly where you also understand what sort of value that we have added to the product and to the whole industry altogether. Before I close out the video, I'll go through the 7 phases once again. Phase 1 is conceive, phase 2 is plan, phase 3 is develop, phase 4 is iterate, phase 5 is launch, phase 6 is study and steady, phase 6 is maintain and kill. So those are all the 7 phases involved in product development. In the next video, we'll look into something very interesting as well. Stay tuned. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, hope you had some good understanding about what product lifecycle is and what are the different stages involved in product development. So once we get onto a product development, that's exactly where you'll have to really figure out what sort of methodology you use in terms of product development. There are people who speak about Agile, Scrum, Waterfall, and then there are people who talk about Kanbans, sprints, a lot of terms like this. But before we jump onto all of them, the first thing probably people should understand is probably lean. A lot of people use this term called terminology called lean. When people say we use a very lean approach towards building our company, we do a lean approach towards building our product, then that's something to actually start understanding first, and then you can jump onto the other things. But let me put it very simple. When you say lean, like the word says, it's pretty slim. When companies build try to build product, only using a very few people. Let's say I want to build a mobile application, or I want to be able to do a catering service. It's very simple, right? A catering service is when somebody is going to give you a call and order a food, and someone goes and delivers to a specific address. So in that case, think about it, right? What if I give my own phone number? Okay, so and then I go and deliver it myself, which means I had to subsequently reduce the number of people who's involved between one end of the process to the other. I don't have a separate customer satisfaction, or a customer success sort of person whom you have to call to. I don't have a delivery partner or something who goes and deliver. It's all just me. So I think putting it simple, that is exactly what a lean structure is all about: being able to minimize the number of interventions or number of people while building a specific product or a service. It's not only for software, it could be for anything. Like I said, for a catering service, like I was telling to you about, there's only one person involved, and you can also build the same thing with 15 people involved. So that's all about being able to understand which is your way of working and what the business requires. But the first thing to start understanding in terms of product development or product management altogether is the lean structure. A lot of companies really follow the lean structure in terms of understanding and in terms of understanding, developing and delivering a product is concerned. So they have only a limited amount of analysts, limited amount of data scientists, limited amount of developers, limited product managers. So I think working within the limit is what the lean system is all about. So I hope you guys understand what a lean system, lean structure is all about now. Let's see the next concept in the next video. Hey everyone. Hope you understood what a lean management structure is all about, and today we're going to look at Agile. I think Agile is being able to putting it simple. Let's not complicate the term at all. Agile is nothing but applying a lean management system onto a software development. That's all what it is. So Agile system is where you look at the concept behind lean management and applying the lean management concept into a lean management methodology into software development or a product development. That's all what Agile is. And when you get into Agile, there are couple of frameworks that people follow, but the most renowned ones are Kanban and Scrum. People adopt to one of these two methodologies and then be able to build their product. What is Kanban and Scrum? Probably I'll take you through the next few sessions around it. But going back to what Agile is, like I said, Agile is a lean structure, and companies adopt Agile sort of methodology purely because they can simultaneously or parallelly work on different things. Think about it, right? When a specific company is working on a product or a particular product, it has multiple features. It could have like 10 or 15 different features that they think sort of just solidifies the whole product or completes the whole product altogether. But in an Agile methodology, you don't start working on all the 15 features at the same time. You look at prioritizing all those 15 features and look for what are my top 3 or 4 or 5 important features. You look at them and then start working on those 3 to 5 features and start delivering those features, getting feedback around those features. Like I said, the iteration and the reiteration process happens in those features. Deliver and get customer feedback, and then start working on the next level of features. So in a sense, it's more like I know I have to be able to build a product which has 25 different features, but I will start with the first 3, or I will start with 5 features, deliver it to the clients, and those are my high priority features. And as the product goes along, I'm going to start delivering the next few features. So this is exactly what Agile is all about. So let me just summarize it pretty simple. Agile is nothing but applying a lean structure, lean product management structure into software development. And to putting it simple, Agile is when when there are multiple features, you don't start working on all the features at the same time. You look at what are my highly important prioritized features, only take those features and start working at them at the same time, and then try getting the feedback from the clients. And then if you have to make changes to the product, you make changes to the product based on the feedback that you're getting from the clients and from the market. It is especially very sort of easy or very innovative or more approached by a lot of companies these days, purely because it can make you get a product into the market quicker and be able to resonate more with the clients. But at the same time, not every product can be built agile. That's also something we have to understand. I will come back to it later. We follow another methodology called Waterfall methodology, but telling about it, it feels agile is probably the way to in everything, right? But it's not the way the whole ecosystem works. There are products where you cannot adopt agile methodology. You have to go to a very conventional waterfall methodology. But most often than not, agile methodology is preferred, purely because, like I said, it's a lean structure and you can always iterate and reiterate the product and be able to deliver what is the most important features to the client at a faster rate, and always be open to refresh and re-innovate the whole product. So that's all what agile methodology is. And in the next video, we will look at what Scrum and Kanban are, the frameworks that agile methodology works on. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, we had seen a lot around on the whole product development process. We had seen what an agile is, what a lean management system is, and then I was telling you I'm going to get you through a little bit into the framework. And in this video we're going to look at the framework called Scrum, which is one of the agile works in a couple of frameworks. One is called Scrum, the other one is called Kanban. Those are the most sort of sought out frameworks in terms of how an agile methodology is executed. That's exactly what we're going to see in this video. We're going to look at what a Scrum model is. When it comes to Scrum, putting it simple, a Scrum is where, as I told, in Agile, we look at the overall product and we look at what are the major features or major priorities in terms of features that has to be a part of the product, and start developing them simultaneously at the same time so we could hit the market faster. And Scrum is the framework on executing this plan. In a Scrum, how it works is generally we all follow a ticketing solution. A lot of people go with Jira or a Trello. Those are around the most common tools that is used in terms of executing an agile framework. Let's say Trello or Jira for that matter. Where we start building out something called a product backlog. A product backlog is where you sort of just list out every activity that are focused towards the product development, and what are the different features that has to be developed. You note down all the activities in the backlog, and then you move on to a process called process, more like what the image shows on the top, where you put it down saying to do items, and then in process, and then done. So the whole philosophy behind a Scrum methodology is you look at a time bound. It could be 2 weeks. Some companies follow it for 2 weeks, some follow it for 4, some follow it for 6. Some even go with the quarterly plan called a PI plan. So it depends on the type of company, or it depends on the framework that works for a specific company. So let's for the sake of it, let's say we are following a 4-week sort of sprint model here. What would happen is you look at 4 weeks as your time parameter, and then push a list of items from the backlog into the process or into to-do items, and then get them groomed. When you say groomed, that is when a product team, a tech team, or a design team, or an analyst team, or analytics team just goes through the specific ticket and decides, saying, this is possible, this is feasible, this is not possible, this is not feasible. So they sort of just come up with an agreement within themselves to be able to promise them, saying within this time band I'm going to execute this specific task for you. Once it gets groomed, then you push them onto process, onto the in-process items. Once it gets to the in-process item, the goal is to be able to get it completed by the end of the sprint, in this case, which is 4 weeks. But what would happen at times is a certain task that is committed at the starting of the sprint may not be completed at the end of the sprint, which means they're still in process and they're not completed. What would happen in that case is those tickets will go back to the backlogs and then pushed onto the subsequent sprint models, sprint time bands. So that is what you call deferred ticket items. And then simultaneously, this sort of helps you to understand the velocity of a specific team. We will be able to calculate saying my specific engineering team is capable of delivering so much of tickets within this 4-week time band. My specific data science team is able to give you so much of tickets within this data, this time band. So that is exactly how we understand the velocity of the team's execution power. So that is the reason why a lot of companies adopt this model. So there is there is a method behind the whole madness in terms of achieving a specific product. And in terms of how you do it, in terms the whole process is concerned, you call something called a daily stand-up meeting. Like they say, you stand up and take the call. So a daily or a weekly stand up where they discuss about, is there any blockers? Is there are things that can be done faster? Is there a thing that is not getting tracked? Or is there are things that are getting overlooked? Those sort of things gets clarified on the daily stand up calls where daily people share what they are doing. So there is a certain sort of method behind the madness on how the whole 4 weeks sort of works. And then you also call something called at the end of the sprint, you also call the conclusion call, retrospective call. People call it differently. Say, let's say retrospective is one of the most common word used. That in that call, people speak about what worked during the sprint, what didn't work during the sprint, what can be done better, what should have been should not have overlooked, what was overlooked. So those sort of discussions happens during the retrospective call, and then the next subsequent sprint they try to fix it. So this is exactly how a Scrum model works. Let's look into what a Kanban would look like in the next call. Sorry, I was speaking about it and then I started speaking about a card. We will look into it in the next video. But just to summarize a little bit on the Scrum model, like I said, Scrum model is the framework of executing an agile model with a time band. In the time band, it is completely variable on the type of company they work for, and the velocity will also vary based on the size of the company people work for. Like I said, this is specifically meant for executing an agile model for softwares, and the Kanban is slightly different. We will go through them in the next call. Have a great day. Bye bye. Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. I'm Rathnakumar. Hope you had a good understanding about what product management or the Agile methodology and the Scrum over the last few videos. I think this video I'm going to jump onto another framework called Kanban. People call it differently. Some people call it Kanban, some would call it Kanban. So it completely depends on how you want to call it. But jumping onto the fact about it. Kanban is another way of executing the agile methodology, like I was telling to you about. But there's a major difference between a Kanban and Scrum model that we talked about. The major difference between these two is Kanban is not time bound. Okay, which is one of the major philosophies behind a Scrum model, where we put them into a time capsule saying it has to be done within 2 weeks, it has to be done within 4 weeks. That sort of time band doesn't work on Kanban. And Kanban has pretty much a very similar sort of execution methodology. There is always the backlog, like how you see it here. There's always a backlog. There is always in process. There is always completed, and the flow sort of remains the same. But in terms, the major difference between a Scrum and a Kanban is the Kanban doesn't have a time band, and there is a specific reason behind it as well. Like I said, Kanban is specifically adopted in executions where time is not the most important attribute. Especially, let's say you're in customer success, or you are in a specific process or development process where time band may not be the most viable way of operating it. Let's say you're in a data science team, you're not in the development team, you're in the data science team, where you're building models. The moment you start building data models, it is tough to be able to just bucket them into time band, because data models are very sensitive. You can never be absolutely sure saying a specific model is going to work. There's a lot of iterations and reiterations has to be done to a model for them to be able to be precise, saying, okay, this model is viable, this model is not viable. So based on those, because of these reasons, this is highly sought out for teams like data science. They are designed, where there are no time bound, saying, okay, you have to be able to complete it within this speculated time. It's just more of a process than the process in terms of execution, than a very programmed way of executing, like how a development team would work. So especially for, like I was telling to you, especially those sort of teams will actually adopt a Kanban methodology, even though if they're working on Agile. So like I said, Agile is the lean way of approaching a product development. Inside Agile, there are two different frameworks that people people go out to. One is the Scrum, the other one is the Kanban. Scrum is where you execute a specific limited amount of tickets, but in a time-bound manner, saying everything has to be done within this specific interval of time. While on a Kanban, you follow the same process in terms of execution without a time band. So that's the major difference. Hope it sort of clarifies, what a Scrum is, what an Agile is, and what a Kanban is. And in the next video, we'll see what a Waterfall methodology. It's pretty interesting. I'll share about it more in the next video. Have a great day. Bye bye. Hey everyone, welcome to the last video in this specific series about product development and product lifecycle. I think I had sort of taken you through a lot of different things to be known about product development and product lifecycle. And today we also looked at Agile, we also looked at Scrum, we looked at Kanban. So we looked at various methodologies and frameworks on how things are executed. But I think this is probably the best way to finish off the series when we are talking about product lifecycle. Waterfall methodology is one of the most classical way of developing a product. Waterfall methodology is completely different from Agile. Like I said, an Agile is where you look at 20 different features, 50 different features, and then start developing the most important features, and then start rolling it out, and then get the customer feedback, and then push it to the market, iterate and reiterate. While waterfall methodology is completely different, where you start, if there are 100 features, you work at all the 100 at the same time towards in terms of development and in terms of getting it to the market. Now you might just ask me, it sounds it sounds crazy and illogical to a certain extent, that why should somebody actually work on all the 100 features and hit the market? Why not just go with the most important features and hit the market? But like I was telling to you, talking to you before, Agile is a way of executing software products, but a waterfall method can be used both in software and for other purposes also. Let's say you are building you are constructing a building which has 100 floors. You're not going to be like, I'm going to build 5 floors, let people stay and have a feel of it, and then tell me what are the things that that has to be different on from the 6th floor on. We don't do that. You build all the 100 floors at the same time. So similarly, there are places where even in software you cannot do it. Let's say you are building an OS. Let's say Microsoft is building coming up with an operating system. They cannot tell you, like, I'm going to give you the most important 10 features in this operating system and then give you an update every 6 weeks for you to be able to get your hands on the next set of features. That is not possible, feasible, or logical. So those are the type of places where a waterfall methodology is adopted. And like I said, there are large softwares, there are really huge softwares which has to be deployed at once. So those sort of places actually use waterfall methodology. The principal difference, like I said, is this. And the one other major difference between an agile and a waterfall methodology is where in waterfall methodologies, teams can be separate. Teams can be segregated. They don't have to follow like a scrum model in terms of executing them there. You don't have to have a daily stand up, because all the prep work is done well much in advance. So there's the analyst team work is done far before the development cycle would start, or the data science would have done far before the development cycle is the cycle started, or the customer interaction would have also done got completed far before the product development started. So these are all the reasons why why I said they don't have to be close buddies when this product gets developed. Every team can be in separate part of the world and still be able to pull off a waterfall methodology. But similarly, we are in the COVID times where nobody looks at anybody. So agile methodology still works works with remote employees, but the only difference is in agile methodology, parallel process is possible. My analyst team and design team can be working simultaneously. You know what the product you're developing, so you can have the product manager will be able to coordinate with the design team and start working on design on one side and be working on the data science team on the other side. And by the time one of the or both the team both the teams would be getting completed with their work around the same time. So it's more around the deployment time they work together. But in a waterfall methodology, it's not possible in general. You really want the design team to be having their own sort of timeline on when you want them to work on. You first finish off the data structuring work. The backend work has to be done. You need to know what sort of data we are talking about, what sort of storage we are talking about, and then the features we are talking about, and then you go on to the UI UX aspect of things and start working on it. So these are all the places where the methodology completely differs. But like I said, a waterfall methodology is used not just in software development, but in a wide array of things. And a lot of large scale companies actually use waterfall methodologies, even for softwares, like I talked about, like I was talking to you about. And given, we should give credits where it's due. A lot of softwares that we use on a daily basis would have actually got built using waterfall methodology. That's one of the most classical way of even building out a product. The only biggest challenge is when you go wrong, you're done. Like I said, in one of the initial product life cycle, on the different phases, that's one of the reason why I started with it. On the different phases, when you follow a waterfall methodology, you're putting in all the R&D, you're putting in all the budgets and developing the product. And once you sort of having you sort of have a steep decline, the product makes no sense. And those are the type of products you might have to sunset, because there's no way you can reiterate the product by process or go back to stage one in terms of ideating the product or conceiving the product again, purely because of the amount of money, time, effort that has gone in terms of development and deployment of the product. You cannot just reiterate after it got out in the market. So that's also the reason why there are, I don't want to bring names, but there are softwares which had like very big sort of or products for that matter, which had very big homework or very big sort of announcement that came into the market, and then they would have pulled back altogether and closed out the whole product, purely because they would, it came through this process of waterfall methodology. You have one shot to be able to connect with the customer the way you want to connect. If they are not able to connect with the customer, then the whole thing goes on a disarray. I think this sort of helps you to understand what a waterfall methodology is all about. And this marks the end of the second part of the series. And in this part, like I said, we saw about product lifecycle, product development, Agile, Waterfall methodology, Scrum framework, Kanban framework. I think it sort of helps you as well. I'm just trying to keep it as simple and easy as possible for people to be able to conceive the whole product management idea. But being a product manager, it is very important for you to understand all these concepts, so you're able to understand while you adopt it. A lot of people may not understand why people do what, but this is the method behind the madness. This is exactly why what is done. So hope you all enjoyed this part of the series, and hopefully in the next coming week we'll see the third part where I'm covering something more around on product management. Please stay tuned. Have a great day. Bye bye.